This is a very difficult topic to get into. If you start to have a good look at what's really going on at General Motors, the picture becomes actually very cloudy. Now, yes, they are investing $35 billion US, well, from 2020 to 2025, in order to be able to produce 1 million EVs per year. But is it worldwide or is it in the US? Well, different people are saying different things, and even General Motors' website is exceptionally confusing. Now, all that aside, GM has ramped up their vehicle deliveries this quarter significantly versus last quarter, and so it should have. In fact, GM actually delivered over 7,000 electric cars in the second quarter of this year in the United States, which is a significant improvement over the 26 they delivered in the fourth quarter of last year. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the channel. If you haven't seen my video about GM's 26 deliveries in the fourth quarter of last year, that one might give you a good laugh. I'll put a link in the description below to that video. If you want some humor, check that one out and, de-stress a little bit. Now, let's have a look at what's going on in the US right now. Then let's look at GM's predictions and try and see if they actually will make sense. Maybe they will. Let me know what you think. During the second quarter of this year, General Motors delivered 582,400 vehicles. That's 15.4% less than 1 year ago. Now, I want to point out the fact that General Motors, right, all of their executive staff, I made a video about this, were paid nearly double what they were last year, right? All their salaries have nearly doubled thanks to their so-called performance bonuses. I'm going to be very interested to see if this year that happens again. I think there should be some questions asked by shareholders, whether or not this is ethical and whether or not this should be happening. I have some serious concerns. I mean, for example, Mary Barra, she had the second highest remuneration in the world for automotive CEOs last year based on performance. It was about $25 million US. Now, I think that there should be some questions asked about that, considering the fact that GM's performance last year wasn't that good when it comes to EVs in particular, which is obviously the future of the vehicle. Now, what is better than that, though, is the fact that GM is finally ramping up EV production now. What about sales in terms of internal combustion engine vehicles? Well, of the 582,000 vehicles that GM delivered in the US in the second quarter of this year, 367,000 of those were Chevrolet. That's down 10.5% year over year. And 132,000 were GMC, down 13.7%. The two brands sold in the US a total of 7,217 plug-in electric cars, all electric cars, over 7,300 if you include BrightDrop Zevo 600 van, which is 36% less than a year ago, and it represents about 1.2% of the total General Motors volume. So only 1.2% of all vehicles sold by GM in the second quarter of this year in the US were electric, only 1.2%. Volkswagen, on the other hand, about 5% of their vehicle sales in the last quarter were electric. Now, while GM's EV sales they're still, to be honest, disappointing, I think, if you're going to be logical about it. They are rebounding, they are ramping up, things are getting better, and I do think the outlook will be very different come this time next year. How much better will it be? A lot better. But that's not really saying a lot. I mean, you could quadruple production. You'd still only be at 28,000 cars per quarter. It's still not much to say. You could say we increased sales by 300%, and it wouldn't really mean much. But it's still going to be a lot better than where they are now. And I do believe the General Motors Silverado electric pickup truck will change the company if they can manufacture them. There's a lot of ifs here, though. A lot of ifs. If you look on their website, you look at their fact sheet page, there's lots of information there it's very optimistic. Now, if Tesla, for example, had posted some of this information, I really believe Seeking Alpha would have had an absolute field day and destroyed them, said all this is fanciful, it's never going to happen, it's not logical. But it's General Motors. And no one cares. No one seems to talk about them. No one seems to have any interest in what General Motors is doing, except for the United States, just the mainstream media, where they, in general, report positive things about GM. Now, in the long term, GM's plan is to increase EV sales in North America to more than 1 million by the end of 2025, says Inside EVs. So does the Electric, so does Clean Technica, so does a lot of different websites, right? But this is actually questionable because different things have been said on different occasions. Now, if we look at GM's website, on the side here, they say, product facts, by mid-decade, we intend to sell 1 million EVs per year in our two largest markets, in North America and with our joint venture partners in China. Now, some people have read that and decided that means GM is not saying they're going to sell 1 million EVs per year in the US. They're saying they're going to sell them if you actually put together the sales of GM's cars in the US and the sales of their vehicles or their joint partner vehicles in China. So basically, people are saying, well, actually, no, GM has a little out clause here because they're actually claiming the Wuling Hongwan Mini EV in this number. All right. So it's more than likely that in 2025, GM, Wuling, and SAIC will together, well, Wuling produces them, but it's a tri-venture, so, they do own, I believe 40% of that venture. But it's likely that around 500,000 of those will be produced. More than likely, we're near those numbers already. Even potentially more than that. That gives General Motors an out clause to only produce, a lot less than 500,000 because GM actually is planning on producing other EVs and selling those in China as well. So maybe 400,000 in the US in 2025. But the media is painting this very differently. The media is saying GM is actually going to deliver 1 million vehicles per year in the United States, which actually appears to be different to what GM says on its website under its product facts. So I think we need to clear this up. We need to find out what the true story is. Does anyone know? Does anyone actually know which of these it is? It's a big difference, right? It's a huge difference because if we're saying that it includes both of them, then the reality is that obviously, Tesla will be well ahead. It will be 1 million miles ahead if GM is saying it's China and the US put together. But if it's not, if it's just the US, then their sales figures could be closer to Tesla's than what they are. Well, a lot closer to Tesla's than what they are today. Now let's have a look at GM's Q1 2022 EV deliveries. When it comes to detailed results, the Bolt EV and Bolt EUV affected by a massive battery recall. If you look at the chart here from Inside EVs, it's very interesting to see. I mean, GM was actually doing quite well with their Bolt sales. Pretty well with their Bolt sales in 2021 until this nightmare happened for them. I mean, look at their deliveries in Q2 and then look at them in Q3 of last year. You can see there's this ramp. There's clearly this ramp going on here where Q1, they did well. They had their record all-time sales figures, deliveries. Then Q2, even record again. And then sales collapsed in Q3 and basically were wiped off the map completely in the fourth quarter. Same deal in the first quarter of this year, but I think only a couple of hundred. Well, now they've rebounded very significantly. And what could affect them as well is the new model. Now, the new model Bolt EUV and Bolt EV is actually going to be quite a bit cheaper than the current model. It really is an actual bargain. There's no other way of putting it. It's such a good price. Frankly, I would have to consider getting one if I could get one for the price you can get one of these in the US. But the big problem there is if you can get it, you need a dealer willing to sell it to you for that price. And that's a big but. That's a big if. Because, of course, GM can't dictate that. They can't tell dealers what to do. Dealers just do what they want to do, essentially. Now, the new 2023 model year Chevy Bolt EV is less expensive, and that should increase interest in sales. Plus, the GMC Hummer EV pickup continues ramping up, albeit fairly slowly. Bolt EV and EUV sales were 6,945 in the second quarter of this year. That's down 38% year over year from 11,263. 11,263 in the second quarter of last year. That's their all-time record. 11,263. Actually, it's not too bad. That's sort of similar to, say, a company like NIO in China. That's about the deliveries they're doing per month in China. XPeng did, I think, 15,000 last month. They could have been on course there to be pretty much matching the deliveries of a company like XPeng say for the second quarter of this year, but of course, because of the battery nightmare, things really got derailed for them. Now, GMC Hummer EV, how many of those were delivered in the second quarter of this year? 272. I have to say, I expected a few more than that. So I'm a little disappointed in that. Let me know if you agree or disagree. What do you think about those numbers? Now that gives us a total of 7,217 for the second quarter. That's down 36% versus the same quarter last year, which is not too bad when you think about what's happened over the last 6 months for them, and 1.2% of GM's volume. What about the Cadillac Lyriq? Well, GM say the Cadillac Lyriq production is accelerating with initial deliveries in process. Whatever that means, I don't really know. They say the ramp up will continue in the second half of 2022. Another positive sign is that the Ultium cells, a joint venture with LG Energy Solutions, begins producing cells in Ohio to support expanded EV manufacturing starting in August. That's good news. Battery factory opens. That will really help them to start ramping up big time. And it means that GM should soon have a strong stream of Ultium batteries to support the rollout of new Ultium-based EVs, including GMC's Hummer EV pickup, Cadillac Lyriq, BrightDrop Zevo 600, and of course, next year, the Chevy Equinox, their $30,000 electric SUV, which frankly, if they can sell it for that price, that's incredible. The other thing to remember, imagine how many batteries GM is going to need, right? For the new Silverado EV, that thing needs a lot of batteries. They're going to need so many batteries. But hey, this is all good news in my view. However, let's have a look at GM's fact sheet. On their website, you can look at this up yourself, gm.com/electric vehicles, and find out some interesting information here from GM. Some of this information, I don't know if it's hyperbolic. I don't know if we should take it seriously. If I was going to invest in the company, I'd want to know for sure that this is absolutely true because it sounds amazing, and hopefully it is. GM's battery facts. Ultium Cells, our joint venture with LG Energy Solutions to develop and mass produce battery cells, will help bring EVs closer to price parity with gas-powered vehicles. Now, obviously GM's saying they're going to sell the Silverado EV base model for $40,000. If you can get one of those for $40,000, that's an absolute no-brainer. What a bargain. That's insane. Now, if you can get a Chevy Equinox for $30,000, that also seems to be an incredible bargain as well. GM is projecting it's going to be able to do this because its next generation Ultium packs will cost 60% less than batteries they use today with twice the energy density expected. I don't know what expected means. They say with twice the energy density expected. So does this mean that their Ultium packs that are coming out now will have twice the energy density of the Bolt and the Bolt EV? Or does it mean when Ultium packs have had, I don't know, further development and they've got version 3.0 in 2027? I don't know. They don't say. They just say they're going to have double the energy density and cost 60% less than batteries in use today. That's a big claim. That's even bigger than the claims that Tesla's making at their battery day, their power day. Now, what I find difficult to understand is how they're going to reduce costs by so much. Why do I say this? Well, they're not going to be able to reduce costs because they're moving to lithium iron phosphate batteries, which is what I think they should do. But anyway, they've invested in this technology, and so I don't think that's an option for them at all. I find it hard to understand how they can reduce costs by such a huge amount, by 50%, because they say our Ultium battery cells feature a state-of-the-art nickel, cobalt, manganese, aluminium chemistry, which was designed to reduce the cobalt content in our batteries by more than 70%. So they're going to double energy density and reduce cost by 50%, but they're still going to be using nickel, cobalt, manganese, aluminium, right? All those things are expensive. They're not cheap, right? And of course, lithium isn't cheap either. So rather than say lithium iron phosphate batteries where you've just got to rely on the price of lithium essentially, the cost of the phosphate is not a significant contribution. But here, GM's still using nickel, cobalt, manganese, aluminium. I don't really understand how they're planning on doubling energy density and getting the cost down by 50%, considering it's going to be using pretty much the exact same battery chemistry, except for less cobalt, right? 70% less cobalt. But you got to remember, put this into context. There's a lot of manufacturers saying we're not going to be using cobalt at all, just eliminating cobalt from the mix entirely. plus saying they're going to be using things like silicon anode. That's the kind of thing that enables battery manufacturers to actually increase energy density significantly. But I haven't heard any of those kinds of announcements from GM, so no one really knows how they plan to double energy density. I mean, doubling energy density is not, no one has said this. GM is the only automaker that I know of that said they're going to be able to double energy density. I haven't heard of any battery company making those claims. None. I mean, solid state, yeah, but that's just all theoretical stuff. I'm talking like real world battery companies that are today producing batteries en masse. They're all saying, we're increasing by 10%, 20%, maybe 30%, even 40% in some cases, but not doubling. Doubling is an entirely different world. That's like the kind of energy density GM is saying they're going to have is, 400 watts per kilo. That's the sort of energy density you need to power a 747. If General Motors is able to do what they're saying they're going to do, this is complete game changer. It completely changes the game for GM. But I'm just wondering what exact magical technology do they have that's going to completely change the game? And is it real? Is it just like we think we can get there? The question is the word projecting. GM says GM is projecting that its next generation Ultium packs will cost 60% less than batteries in use today, with twice the energy density expected. Now, Ultium batteries, right? They're being used today. Yeah? Right? So, next generation, does that mean not the batteries they have now? And projecting, what does projecting mean? Does that mean, well, we said projecting, we just meant we projected, but we didn't quite get there. So, I'm very intrigued to know. If GM can do this, I hope they can. It will be a game changer for the company, and it will definitely give them a significant advantage versus the competition. Now, there's a whole lot of other good things that General Motors are doing, which I think it's very clear they will deliver on. Like, for example, we're working alongside EVgo to build more than 2,700 fast charging stations. That's not plugs, that's stations. 60,000 plugs by the end of 2025, tripling the size of the United States' largest public fast charging network. Approximately 500 fast charging stalls to go live by the end of 2021. Now, as you can see, some of this information needs to be updated. GM probably important they update their website. It seems as though they haven't updated it since 2021. We're now in 2022. But anyhow, there's lots of good stuff in here. So I'll put the link in the description below. You can go through it and see some of the impressive stuff that GM is definitely working on today and now. Some of this theoretical stuff is where I'm questioning things, and I'm having a problem with knowing exactly what GM really is planning on delivering. I mean, for example, right, CATL's latest battery technology, they deliver the exact numbers. Here's the exact energy density numbers. Here's our exact energy density numbers of where we're at before. Here's the cell level. Here's the pack level. Here's the type of batteries we're using. Here's the chemistry we're using. Here's how we're actually going to achieve it. They're facts. It's the sort of thing I can handle. Maybe I've got Asperger's, right? I don't know. But I can handle that. I can go, okay, here's the reality. Here's what we're dealing with. Here's what the timeline. And I can say, okay, therefore, this will likely happen. XXX. You get what I'm saying, right? With GM, it's a lot more vague. Now, what I want to know from you is, what do you think of GM's plans? I love their ambition. Can they pull them off? Can they do what they say they're going to do? Let me know what you think in the comments section below.